So once again, let us come to the culminating passage of the Katha Upanishad, and what, as I said, would relate to the third boon that, in my opinion, associates to the dimension, the guna of sattva, which is being or harmony or essence, and to further enliven the image and association that was carried down to the tradition of these gunas in the text that dealt with that sage of the 19th century, Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna told the story where he said that there was a traveler who was going through a forest, and the forest was waylaid by 3 robbers, and these 3 robbers stole from him, and they tied him up, and then they were going to leave him for dead. But the first one, when leaving, said, "Oh, we should kill him now," and left. And the second said, No, we should just leave him tied up forever, and then he'll be lost in the forest and will cause us no trouble. And then the third said nothing, went with the other 2, but then came back and undid the bonds of the traveler and pointed out to him the way out of the forest. And in this story, the 3 robbers are associated with the 3 dimensions, the 3 gunas. And the third, who comes back and returns and shows mercy and does nothing more than point the way, was that which was related to sattva, being our harmony or essence, which, as we saw, was open to not being the primary cause, but just pointed the way to the traveler so that he could be freed from the dominion of the dimensions, let us say. So here the sacrificial fire has come to receive the third boon, and after first putting away from himself the temptations of the world and its allurements, comes to receive instruction and enlightenment. And let us see the shape or form that takes. One thing is the good, and quite another thing is the pleasant, and both seize upon a man with different meanings. Of these, whoso takes the good, it is well with him. He falls from the aim of life, who chooses the pleasant. The good and the pleasant come to a man, and the thoughtful mind turns all round them, and distinguishes. The wise chooses out the good from the pleasant, but the dull soul chooses the pleasant rather than the getting of his good and its having. And thou, O Nachiketas, hast looked close at the objects of desire, at pleasant things and beautiful, and thou hast cast them from thee. Thou hast not entered into the net of riches, in which many men sink to perdition. For far apart are these, opposite, divergent, the one that is known as the ignorance, and the other the knowledge. But, Nachiketas, I deem truly desirous of the knowledge, whom so many desirable things could not make to lust after them. They who dwell in ignorance within it, wise in their own wit, and deeming themselves very learned. Men bewildered are they who wander about round and round, circling like blind men led by the blind. The childish wit, bewildered and drunken with the illusion of riches, cannot open its eyes to see the passage to heaven. for he thinks that this world is, and there is no other, comes again and again into death's thraldom. So he that thinks that only the narrow manifested face of happenings and their allurements is a real thing, with that falls into the thrall of death. He that is not easy, even to be heard of by many, and even of those that have heard, there are many who have not known him. A miracle is the man that can speak of him wisely or is skilful to win him, and when one is found, a miracle is the listener who can know God even when taught of him by the knower. So as more subtle than the subtle, more fine than the fine, more all-comprehensive and exclusive, so the loose echoes have not even been heard by many, and those who have heard those echoes, not many have recognized it, and even of those who have recognized it, and even come into acquaintance of one who has some growth in wisdom and capacity, realization in that, even being able to awaken with that is a rare miracle. An inferior man cannot tell you of him, for thus told thou canst not truly know him, since he is thought of in many aspects. So those who are limited by narrow dimensions and only see things under certain narrow dimensions cannot see that which exceeds those narrow dimensions, which is comprehensive of those narrow dimensions. And so it has all these many manifold aspects. Unless told of him by another, thou canst not find the way there to him, for he is subtler than subtlety, and that which logic cannot reach. This wisdom is not to be had by reasoning, O beloved Nachiketas. Only when told thee by another it brings real knowledge. So, of course, there was a tradition of this witness, and at the same time, there are many aspects at play here that we don't want to think are exclusive in the exclusive tone of all of the Upanishads. For instance, here there's a very, we could say, discriminative notion of coming to the ground of substance and reality that makes a stark division between ignorance and knowledge. In a different Upanishad, the Isha, for instance, there's a reconciliation of flux, which has the complement of not generating thought, of maybe not ignorance is the right word, but of certainly not knowing, and of knowing being in complement to the supreme basis of solution. In the same way, there's a dimension here that only through having seen the witness awoken through others, only having seen the witness roused through the full richness, does one truly recollect to some degree in this manner of expression and comprising. Only when told thee by another it brings real knowledge, the wisdom which thou hast gotten, and you could even say in a way that no narrow self has agency over the supreme reality which always has to be the instructor of it. Truly thou art steadfast in the truth, even such a questioner as thou may I meet with always. Nachiketa speaks. I know of treasure that it is not forever, for not by things unstable shall one attain that one by which is stable. Therefore I heap the fire of Nachiketas, and by the sacrifice of transitory things I won the eternal. When thou hast seen in thy grasp, O Nachiketas, the possession of desire, and the firm foundation of this world, and an infinity of power, and the other shore of security and great praise, and wide-moving firm foundation, wide and strong and steadfast, thou didst cast these things from thee. realizing God by attainment to Him through spiritual yoga, even the Ancient of Days, who has entered deep into that which is hidden and is hard to see, for He is established in our secret being and lodged in the cavern heart of things. The wise and steadfast man casts afar from him joy and sorrow. But still, just as I said, there was the reconciliation to the reality of past, the flux and the Isha. Here, too, you find that there is a renunciation of self-born will, a realization to the supernal and present and supreme past narrow accidents. And so even with the greatest wealth and foundation and full capacity before you, you renounce those for that full, yoking, pivotal association to the Lord of essence, reality, and truth. And the tradition of the secret cavern, as we find roused even in the Vedas, and most beautifully and vividly so, and those which we've recently treated, of Bharadwaja Parashara, that being the inner inhabitant of its own condition of reality and the filling of the gap to its dimension of full foundation which sounds through the whole. So the image of this is that it is the dweller of the cave, and the cave is associated with the living dimension and that which gives life of this ever-living in the heart. And so here we find the same meditation formed into a more definite conception of meditation in this situation of interaction. By realizing God by attainment to Him through spiritual yoga, even the Ancient of Days, who has entered deep into that which is hidden and is hard to see, entering into the secret of secrecy. For He is established in our secret being and lodged in the cavern heart of things. The wise and steadfast man casts afar from him joy and sorrow. The superficial dimensions for the continent core. When mortal man has heard, when he has grasped, when he has forcefully separated the righteous one from his body and won that subtle being, then he has delight, for he has got that which is one can indeed delight in. Verily I deem Nachiketas as a house wide open. So this idea of fulfilling the foundation and truth of the engenderable, of separating from the accidental, carries through the whole cultural continuum. Even, as I said, in the 19th century, and someone like Ramakrishna, he would often talk about people as being ripe or unripe, and that when they are ripe, he would make a comparison with a coconut. A fully ripened coconut, the meat and flesh separates from the husk, and so you can hear the separation from the husk. And so in the same way, this separation of the eternal and true being, that all delight and residence and realization is in, of having formed the true seed of eternal witness and wisdom, has come to that for which we can have full delight. And being open to that is the inhabiting thrall of this perfect suppliant of the divine sacrificial fire. Nachiketas, tell me of that which thou seest otherwhere than in virtue and otherwhere than in unrighteousness, otherwhere than in the created and the uncreated, otherwhere than in that which has been and that which shall be. So if it is truly unconditioned, if it resides perfectly unto itself, it is above all the narrow aspects, it is uncommitted, it is resident in itself. Death, Yama speaks, the seat and goal of all that the Vedas glorify, and which all austerities declare, for the desire of which men practice holy living, of that I will tell thee in brief compass. Om is that goal, O Nachiketas. And so in the Vedas, and you can see the same intuition spreading into Heraclitus and others, the eternal word, the meaningful articulation that is one with the articulator, one with the timeless soul of expression and happening, is that which is awoken unto and can give fulfilled realization and consciousness. And so it is the apex, the indrawn stability from which all expression branches and originates and resolves. And so this intuition in this tradition of India became associated with this notion of this central image, symbol, articulation, which in its all-comprehensive undivergence contained the full origin and end and full dimension of happening of all things. So this idea of Om, which became more promoted or more developed in a certain way in this time than it was loosely and fluidly awoken in the earlier portions of the sages of the Vedas. For this symbol is Brahman, so directly what it's supposed to signify. This syllable is the Most High. This syllable, if one know, whatsoever one shall desire, it is his. So if one comes to the focal, the creative, the enunciating of the eternal, and awakens that dimension to your full capacity, then the witnessing, creative, immanent and eminent power in this intuitional, conceptual notion is awoken unto one. This support is the best, this support is the highest. Knowing this support, one goes great in the world of Brahman. The wise one is not born, neither does he die. He came not from everywhere, neither is he any one. He is unborn, he is everlasting, he is ancient and sempiternal. He is not slain in the slaying of the body. So if the full dimension lies in the direct and ultimately real ingenerable, and the bounds of function are set in and through and to and of its uncaused cause of inclusive reality, then it sets the dimensions of happening. It is the alignment and full purpose and soul of happening, and yet it is beyond it. And therefore it is not subject to accidents. And so in an alignment, a spiritual integral alignment to things, the more we relate to them from without, the less we're awoken to their reality from within. To take an example, the situation in our life of the branch or leaf of a tree. If you just take that branch, break it from the tree, and try to see what it can be good for, you can use it for this and that relation and purpose, but none of them are as subtle, essential, realized and true as that for which the life is living. And so relations degenerate, and thinking that one can kill the uncaused cause, the eternal, of all seat and soul and determination, is recognized here as a pattern of false association and entanglement. And many of these expressions, I think we will find, or can be found, in the Bhagavad Gita. This document predates definitely the writing and the final rendered form of that, and many of the instances of expression are directly shadowed, and the intuitions fall into their own development and place. So, for instance, just since we're raising this, the previous notion of this supreme, unconditioned, uncaused reality being at the full and competent truth of all, that beyond the accidents of its revelation became competently overcome by the perfect birth of its forming, creates this notion of this perfect child of our nature, this full consummation of the condition of natural process, this child greater than the Father, this perfect Son, who is being birthed in the Vedas and in Bharadwaj or Parashara, the condition of the perfect progeny and of being the power that is in the mothers is in its essential reality unparted. But this intuition of that which is the final and complete recollection and communion of cause of things, in an incarnated sense, gave the sense of this supreme person, Purusha, Narayana, that fills all different incarnate forms and witnesses and happenings, and gives the tradition and train that can be seen in passages here, and then shall continue in its different strains of development subsequently. If the slayer thinks that he slays, if the slain think that he is slain, both these have not the knowledge. This slays not, neither is he slain. Finer than the fine, huger than the huge, the self hides in the secret heart of the creature. When a man strips himself of will, so like I said, complete disassociation from your narrow will. When a man strips himself of will and is weaned from sorrow, then he beholds him. So losing your accidental will and association, and not having repercussions or reverberations of dispossession, the simple reality of purified being comes to the recollection of witness. When a man strips himself of will and is weaned from sorrow, then he beholds him purified from the mental elements. He sees the greatness of the self-being, the unborn reality, Brahman, the supreme self. Seated, he journeys far off. Lying down, he goes everywhere. This is, I think, a most beautiful turn of phrase, which is that seated, it journeys far, and lying down, being completely at repose, it goes everywhere. Who other than I is fit to know God, even him who is rapture? So this divine measure is completely associated with rapture, revel in rapture, undefiled inspiration, continent and inclusive capacity. Even him who is rapture and the transcendence of rapture and the purposeful fulfilment that exceeds such measure and margin. Realizing the bodiless in bodies, the established in things unsettled, the great and omnipresent self, the wise and steadfast soul, grieves no longer. So realizing the archetypal, unconditioned, eternal, that is the all in all, out of all powers composed, the complete engagement and witness of that which fulfills the full reality, the inner inhabitation, the complete reflection of the dimension of uncaused spirit, in bodies unto that full state of communion and mind which is bodiless, of that which is unvarying, established in the appearances that are variegated and unsettled, that great and present supreme self. Once witnessed, the wise and steadfast soul grieves no longer. And what are the corroborations of this, namely that it requires full and undiluted, direct, cohesive, independent living measure, the self-reliance that, for instance, an Emerson would try to enunciate concerning. The self is not to be won by eloquent teaching, nor by brain power, nor by much learning, but only he whom this being chooses can win him. Those who find their interior purpose, their full call for present reality, the aligning agency of presence of origin in the fulfilment of function of their selves, can see of that which governs and rules function, the revealed body, the revealed inhabitation, the revealed nature. The word that is translated from the Sanskrit in Shankara's commentary is seen to have many of those essences and margins. For to him this self bears his body, this complete relation to eminence in a live immanence. None who has not ceased from doing evil, or who is not calm, or not concentrated in his being, or whose mind has not been tranquilized, can by wisdom attain to him. So if the complete fulfillment of natural function is like a reflection, then it requires exceeding of the accidents of your own dimension, being completely at peace, being purified in the presence of the supernal reality, in order to have the consonant purpose of energy recollected to that which is unseparated from its full condition and truth. So not he who is not ceased from doing evil, who perpetuates dislocation and entanglement, or who is not calm, who is not pacified in his self, or not concentrated in his being. So if you're, in all the different traditions, and those of China and those of elsewhere, if you're dissipated, in the terms of Socrates, if you're incontinent, if you're like a colander in which things fall out, but are not gathered into the interior realization and witness and purpose, then being, substance, fulfillment cannot come to its point and principle and purpose. Hence we see all natural happenings not caring about seeing things under faces, but being gathered in by the realities full. Or whose mind has not been tranquilized can by wisdom attain to him. So even wisdom, if it's not pacified in the truth of its being, is but a hollow semblance and form, a narrow promise. And so Socrates in the Phaedrus, when discussing the shortcomings of expression and language, said, what's the point of a beauty of expression if it brings a plant for a day, a show plant, one that doesn't root and one that isn't fulfilled to its nature's reality and purpose? So the full grounding, the full rooting, the full engaging, the full direct relation is here put above even the appearance and instantiation of a wisdom that would be unfulfilled otherwise. He to whom the sages are as meat, and the heroes as food for his eating, and death is an ingredient in his banquet, how thus shall one know of him and where he abides? So in this vivid witness, the intuition that went before of generation being like the feeding, and this consumption aligning to the eternal in the mortal, so it sits atop the feeding and the fed, and so this eternal feeding that even takes the greatest aspects to the presence of its truth. How shall we come unto that acquaintance? There are two that drink deep the truth of the world, of work well accomplished. They are lodged in the secret plane of being, and in the highest kingdom of the Most High is their dwelling. As of light and shade the knowers of Brahman speak of them. and those of the 5 fires, and those who kindle the fire of Nachiketas. So here we have pointing out different traditions of expression and association. The intimate communion between energy and the repose of being, of both axes of fulfilled rotation, of day and night being clothed in the eternal, which sets in itself and holds in itself, as heaven surrounds the earth, the truth of all things. These intuitions for more vivid communion and recollection can be seen, among other places, in the portions of Bharadwaj and Parashara that have been recorded, and you can certainly read and enjoy. May we have strength to kindle Agni. So one of the supreme expressions were of this fire that converts to itself and is the stable parent of energy and communion of cause. Nachiketas, for he is the bridge of those who do sacrifice. So this reality is the bridge, the way to cross the river. And he is Brahman supreme and imperishable, and the far shore of security to those who would cross this ocean. So the complete identification with what I've talked about, and I encourage you all to dive further into, and which I've provided readings for, is here fully identified with. And how is this yoking, this alignment, this orientation, this intensive, resident realization to be awoken? Images are now given for that purpose. Know the body for a chariot. This is also the same images used by Plato. And the soul, or Parmenides uses similar images in his recollections too. Know the body for a chariot, and the soul for the master of the chariot. Know reason for the charioteer, and the mind for the reins only. And this is, I think, a very insightful way of the way in which all these different traditions came to regard the use of the mind, namely, they are instruments for the fulfillment in organic presence of nature's realization and function. They are not to alienate or exclude or impose their imposition, not to whip the driver, but they are to be held in the hand of the superior presence and reality, completeness of fulfilled occasion and principle. The senses they speak as the steeds, and the objects of sense as the paths in which they move. The one yoked with self, and the mind and the senses is the enjoyer, say the thinkers. So the full revel in rapture, the full fulfillment of human fullness and purpose, giving the present meaning to its full engagement, is this full enjoyer to the purposeful, complete, entire. So it said, beyond sorrow and happiness, yet this complete enjoyer is purposeful to its basis. Now he that is without knowledge, with his mind ever unapplied, his senses are to him as wild horses, and will not obey the driver of the chariot. So those who have not come to wisdom and witness, realization and knowledge, all the happenings seem to be ungoverned, seem to be unregulated, and the complete purpose of the life is lost. But he that has knowledge with his mind ever applied, his senses are to him as noble steeds, and they obey the driver in the what I've called the hymns, but you can call them the poems or meditations or fulfilled witnesses of these sages of the ancient world in Bharadwaj or Parashara. The steed is the intuition that of its own nature rouses and aligns and calls to this full witness of presence. So in the same way, he that has knowledge with his mind ever applied, his senses are to him as noble steeds, and they obey the driver, yea. He that is without knowledge and is unmindful and is ever unclean reaches not the goal, but wanders in the cycle of phenomena. But he that has knowledge and is mindful and pure always reaches that goal whence he is not born again. To come past the axis of engaged rotation to the principle of the ever-living, eternal, and real. That man who uses the mind for reins and the knowledge for the driver reaches the end of his road, the highest seat of Vishnu. Vishnu is seen as the renewing, sustaining face of the divine presence and power in the universe. Then the senses, the objects of sense, are higher. So above just the superficial happenings, the 10,001 different faces that we can see, the reality behind it is higher, and higher than the objects of sense is the mind that can come to this recognition and soul of basis. Higher than the mind is the faculty of knowledge, and than that the great self is higher. And higher than the great self is the unmanifest, and higher than the unmanifest is the Purusha. Than the Purusha there is none higher. He is the culmination. He is the highest goal of the journey. So unless everything was being rounded in that which is present and true and resolved, it would be nothing. So the axis, the focal, there can be no quality of a ray without that which gives it light. There can be no quality of the equalization of the water in a wave if there be no water. And so that which is fully true and immersed and present beyond the accidents of time to its full nature has to be at the culminating essence and point and soul and basis of all. He is the secret self in all existences and does not manifest himself to the vision. Yet he is seen by the seers of the subtle, by a subtle and perfect understanding. The full engagement beyond the accidental aspects of things. And how are we to awaken, how are we to rouse? How is this same yoking to be given? Let the wise man restrain speech, restrain narrow articulation, functioning and happening. In his mind, find its competent basis, and mind in the self. There again, true basis of showing through and involvement, and knowledge in the great self. And that again let him restrain in the self that is at peace. So it expressed it in different ways, thus not being wedded to either of the narrow expressions or capacities. So that supreme nature, whether identified first with the unmanifest, or the Purusha, or the supreme self that is at peace, in and of and through that, awakening and witness and fulfilled condition of life is to be lived and awoken. Arise, awake, find out the great ones and learn of them. Share this deepening realization to its purpose and truth, for sharp as a razor's edge. It's an expression that got wide usage. Hard to traverse, difficult of going is that path, say the sages. That in which sound is not, nor touch, nor shape, nor diminution, nor taste, nor smell, that which is eternal, and it is without end or beginning, higher than the great self, the stable, that having seen, from the mouth of death there is deliverance. So even beyond the fulfillment of quality of the highest nature, that which is stable unto itself, is the essence, the rousing to full condition of life and consciousness, the ambrosia that can resolve the condition of mortality. The man of intelligence, having spoken or heard the eternal story of Nachiketas, wherein death was the speaker, grows great in the world of the Brahman. And passing to the next section. The self-born has set the doors of the body to face outwards. So in this self-born reality, there's an opening outwards, there's a permeability to that which is without, and therefore people falsely seek the universal and unconditioned and self-abiding nature, confusedly in dislocation outwards, rather than waking to its continent reality, cause, presence, and purpose, as we shall see, which the fulfilment of witness and realization ushers us past. The self-born has set the doors of the body to face outwards. Therefore the soul of a man gazes outwards, and not at the self within. Hardly a wise man here and there, desiring immortality, turns his eyes inward, and sees the self within. The rest childishly follow after desire and pleasure, and walk into the snare of death that gapes wide for them. But calm souls, having learned of immortality, seek not for permanence in the things of this world, that pass and are not. That is self-explanatory. By the self one knows form and taste and smell. By the self one knows sound and touch, and the joy of man with woman. What is there left in this world of which the self not knows? This is that thou seekest. So the basis for recognition, for life, for consciousness, for experience, is held within and of and through that supreme and supernal self, yet that which transcends all these, and is the essential presence and the reality of all these. It is that, the key to that which resolves the dimension to that unmoved cause and presence of truth, that is sought. The calm soul, having comprehended the great Lord, the omnipresent self, by whom one beholds both to the end of the dream and to the end of waking, ceases from grieving, both in the image, in the processing, in the dream, and in the wakefulness, that which is the consistent core. He that has known from very close this eater of sweetness, the jiva, the self within that is Lord of what was and what shall be, shrinks not thereafter from aught, nor abhors any. This is that thou abhorrest. So even here, we should point out that, in my opinion, the greater the organic disturbance to a process, the less the eminent is all immanent, the more it becomes an abstraction fastened onto. But here, it is still not in any way an abstraction. It is not a distant idea of category or notion or logical discrimination, which it frankly abhors. But the truth of that which is reality and resident, the truth of that which is the soul, the truth of that which truly is this enjoyer, that is still the unconditioned and of its full premise of reality. And so there's not a false thinking that there's a difference between them, but the recollection and that which is to be recollected, the function and that which fulfills the function, are not separated or divorced or alienated in this condition of witness and reality. He is the seer that sees him who came into being before austerity and was before the waters. Even before purification it was there, even before process it was there. Deep in the heart of the creature he sees him, for there he stands by the mingling of the elements. This is that thou seekest. This is Aditi, the mother of the gods, who was born through the prana, and by the mingling of the elements had her being. Deep in the heart of things she has entered, there she is seated. This is that thou seekest. This is just one and again imaging, meditation happening, association with the different recollections that have gone current. As a woman carries with care the unborn child in her womb, so is the master of knowledge lodged in the tinders. So here the full dimension of association of that most precious child, that most loved reality and purpose, that eternal and unchanging at the heart of all things. As a mother holds her child in her womb and protects it, so is that true living and universal, even in the fuel, the full truth and consonant cause, and that which is to be brought to birth of full capacity. So as a woman carries with care the unborn child in her womb, so is the master of knowledge lodged in the tinders. And day by day should men worship him, who live the waking life and stand before him with sacrifices, for he is that Agni, that supreme inheritor of presence and cause and fire. This is that thou seekest. He from whom the sun arises and to whom the sun returns. So, like the image of day and night, light and darkness, so the purity and presence of undissevered cause, of illuminated being's reality. The sun puts out its light, and then the sun gathers up the light in the meditation, and that which gives this fulfilment of function, which is at the unalienated whole, at the complete resident, unimposed upon heart and truth of all things, is meditated in this way in witness, which is associated with the sun, or with Agni, or with energy, or with process, and with its unmoved basis of origin. And both these intuitions find another face in the idea of the eclipse, or the horns, as they're seen in Egypt or elsewhere. He from whom the sun arises, and this is the same expression that we'll find in the culminating meditative passages of the Isha. And to whom the sun returns, in him are all the gods established, none passes beyond him. This is that thou seekest. So in those meditations or hymns or poems that come down in pregnant rapture from the Vedas, from the idea of this wealth, this ray, this inhabitation of process being gathered up, like our full nourishment and full condition, penned in by its parent of presence and cause, is consistent throughout, and even transcends a narrow treatment. What is in this world is also in the other. Like I said, there is no two, they are the same. And what is in the other, that is again in this. Who thinks he sees difference here, from death to death he goes. So if there's difference between the recollection, resolution, and expression and enlivenment, and that which comprehends and is the truth of those things, then you are fractured and divided and not made whole. The communion to the fulfillment of natural function is kept from that which it is functioning in and of and for. And so there is no false, alienated condition, but an unseparated and whole reality. What is in this world is also in the other, and what is in the other, that again is in this. Who thinks he sees difference here, from death to death he goes. Through the mind we must understand that there is nothing in this world that really varies. So the eternal is the truth and the unchanging, the motivation and presence, the lap of the process of the waters, and that in which that lap is held. Who thinks he sees difference here? Who thinks there's a variation in the reality of process? from death to death he goes. The Purusha who is seated in the midst of ourself is no larger than the finger of a man. For some reason this expression came to have more concreteness and purpose later on, but I think it's just used as an expression of something very small, and that it's just of no great imposition of size or reality. The Purusha who is seated in the midst of ourself is no larger than the finger of a man, he who is the Lord of what was and what shall be. Because they expressly previously have said that it's beyond bigness, beyond smallness, beyond dimension. Him having seen, one shrinks not from aught, nor abhors any. This is that thou seekest. The Purusha that is within us is no larger than the finger of a man. He is like the blazing fire that is without smoke. So this complete communion of fruition, of process, this complete fulfillment of generation to the dimension of its reality, in other places is said to be like one of the reasons why ghee is taken as a purity of image is because not only does it wed the image of the cow with the fire, but it's said to be the fuel that leaves no remain. He is like a blazing fire that is without smoke. He is Lord of his past and his future. He alone is today, and he alone shall be tomorrow. This is that thou seekest. As water that rains in the rough place, in difficult places, run to many sides and on the mountain tops, so he that sees separate law and action of the one Spirit follows in the track of what he sees. So if you think there's a separation, then on the surface of that separation, like the water of your being spreading out and being polluted and dispersed, you will not come to continent reality and purpose. But just like that fulfillment of transition and fuel and recollection and realization of cause, being in and of that one original, uncaused, universal and the same, so but as pure water that is poured into pure water, even as it was, such it remains in this full condition of consciousness and vocality. So it is with the soul of the thinker who knows God, O seed of Gautama. The unborn who is not devious-minded has a city with 11 gates. When he takes up his abode in it, he grieves not. But when he is set free from it, that is his deliverance, so to come to the eternal, the full fruition of freedom. This is that thou seekest. Lo, the swan, whose dwelling is in the purity. I've seen explanations and equations of the word, the same word that can be used for swan in a similar utterance being used for the great self of the great I am at the nature of things. But both images have been dear, so perhaps we shouldn't part them in that capacity. Lo, the swan whose dwelling is in the purity. He is the vasu in the interregions, the sacrifice at the altar, the guest in the vessel of the drinking. He is in man and in the great ones, and his home is in the law, and his dwelling is in the firmament. He is all that is born of water, and all that is born of earth, and is all that is born in on the mountains. He is the truth, and he is the mighty one. So as I said before, and is amplified intuitionally and presently in those passages of Bharadwaj or Parashara or others, one can only have all these faces in the truth of the unconditioned cause, of the uncaused cause, that nothing imposes upon. For thence alignment, enactment, self, residence, realization, eternal fulfillment of process, and all the different lenses that can be brought, the perspective of the hill and the mountain, the fast-running water, the charger of the battle, the solution of the ruling element, the eternal glory of the native and fulfilled truth that eats up the soul of transient happenings, the way and the right, all these different faces always being aligned to the same thing, would not have competency or condition of capacity unless that which they're awakening and rousing to exceeds and is unconditioned by other things, hence being allowed to be fully present through those purposeful bases of realization and consciousness and enlivenment to itself. This is he that draws the main breath upward and casts the lower breath downward. So breath and life energy are intimately associated in these reflections. The dwarf that sits in the center, to him all the gods do homage. When this encased spirit that is in the body falls away from it, when he is freed from its casing, what is there that then remains? This is that thou seekest. Man that is mortal lives not by the breath, no, nor by the lower breath, but something else we live in, which both of these have their being. So even the energy and in and out, extension and withdrawal of life and fulfillment of happening is not that upon which truth or reality depends, it's that in which these truly live and are and lie. Surely, O Gautama, I will tell thee of this secret and eternal Brahman, and likewise what becomes of the soul when one dies. For some enter a womb to the embodying of the spirit, and others follow after the immovable, according to their deeds as the goal, and after the measure of their revealed knowledge. So I think there's a higher truth also in that everything is dying and passing away, and the solution to this resolution and association of being is in a great sense this rebirth to this continent truth and how our births have brought us. This that wakes in the sleepers, creating desire upon desire, this Purusha, him they call the Bright One, him Brahman, him immortality, and in him are all the worlds established, none goes beyond him. So that which establishes all the dimensions of the universe, all the dimensions of the world, is the same which gives the association to the thirst, to desire, to fulfilled continent and habitation, all in all completeness. This is that thou seekest. Even as one fire has entered the world, but shapes itself to the forms it meets. So this is obviously meditating in the same communion of rapture I've referred to before, that it converts everything to itself and is subtle beyond subtle measure. So there is one spirit within all creatures, but it shapes itself to form and form. It is likewise outside these. It does all this by its will, but it is unimposed upon by the instantiations of its unconditioned happening. Even as one atmosphere, air, ether, so this air, atmosphere, sky, the same things have been translated in different ways, is the dimension of interaction. The atmosphere into which this fulfilled witness comes to birth and its lived participation of organic condition awoken and is used in this way. Even as air has entered into the world but shapes itself to the forms it meets, so there is one spirit within all creatures, but it shapes itself to form and form, it is likewise outside these. Even as the sun is the eye of all this world, yet is not soiled by the outward blemishes of the visual, so there is one spirit within all creatures, but the sorrow of this world soils it not, for it is beyond grief and his danger. So the images of the Platonists and of those who went before, of the center good and axis upon which all face and orientation and perfecting power and recollection past the forms to the good springs, here in living and continent capacity is also that which is the inner witness of the full world, is the deed of all good men, in the word of a passage of the Mahabharata, of the fullness given unto the fullness. One calm and controlling spirit within all creatures that makes one form into many fashions, the calm and strong who see him in their self as in a mirror. Theirs is eternal felicity, and 'tis not for others. So if all manifestation is unfolding, unsheathing, reflecting in the parent presence and cause, then only those who see the reality, who see the goal in the truth of the reflection, can come to the continent and fulfilling meaning, presence, felicity, beatitude of margin and origin. The calm and strong who see him in their self, so in the full operation of the perfect reality of their being, as in a mirror, theirs is eternal felicity, and 'tis not for others. And more than even what I just said, it's not to be looked for outward, it's to be recognized as the life of life and essence of within, and therein and therethrough find expression. The one eternal in the transient, the one consciousness in the many conscious beings, the one being orders and desires, and orders the desires of many, the calm and strong who behold him in their self as in a mirror. Theirs is the eternal peace, and 'tis not for others. This is he. Is there all they can realize him, a highest felicity, which none can point to, nor any define it. So even in Parmenides and elsewhere, the culmination of the fulfilled foundation of realization and functioning came to it is. So the continent one, the ever-present, ever-living eternal, at the truth and fulfillment of all functioning. The most that people often realize and resolve unto is the realizing that this is it, this is he. This is the fulfillment of function, and they reconcile and resolve in that developing experience and composure and what it ripens and brings to full reality. This is he, is all they can realize of him, a highest felicity which none can point to, nor any define it. So if they could define it from without, they would hold it down. The living would not live. If it was not supernal and at the same time essential, the combination and the full inclusion of purpose would be alienated. If it could be defined by accidents from without, then by logic, by brain power, by narrow reasoning, could they imprison that which cannot be enfolded. How shall I know of him whether he shines or reflects one light in another? So this rousing of the question, even the light is a reflection in the uncaused cause. So how this combination is brought about, how the complete and continent service of interior happening is roused unto that which is, this combination which in the earlier passage he said of this pivoting presence, was it of the unmanifest and the Purusha behind it, or of the Supreme Self at rest, this combinating that all they can see is that it is. This is he, becomes of full acquaintance and essence and purpose, and isn't even defined by accidental margins. There, in this reality, the sun cannot shine and the moon has no luster. All the stars are blind. There our lightnings flash not, nor any earthly fire, for all that is bright is but the shadow of his brightness, and his shining, by his shining, all this shines. So everything exists in a secondary, a borrowed condition, a revelation of its supreme fulfilled witness, of unseparated and supernal reality. And how else can we rouse? More images are given. This is an eternal Ashwata tree, whose root is above, but its branches are downward. So in the Gita, they say that the same ripens the fruit on its own branches too as well. It is he that is called the Bright One and Brahman. So its unitary state, its oneness, its Brahmanness, its immortality, and in him are all the worlds established. None goes beyond him. All this universe of motion moves in the prana, the life energy, and from the prana also it is proceeded. A mighty terror is he, yea, a thunderbolt uplifted. Who know him are the immortals. So all generation is fulfilled in the union of the ingenerable. So the ruling full horizon of margin is ever unparted, but that which governs it is this unparted whole continent complete reality. Thence, under this conditioning, for fear of him, the fire burns, for fear of him the sun gives heat, for fear of him Indra and Vayu and death hasten in their course. If in this world of men, and before thy body fall from thee, thou wert able to apprehend it, then thou availest for embodiment in the worlds that he creates. So coming to apprehend, to resolve, to develop unto this condition of truth, then one becomes suitable for habitation in the worlds. Ramakrishna used to always say that feel free to live in the world, but ripen unto realization first, for without that you won't be able to, he didn't say it in this way, but be your true self, to have agency and soul, condition and capacity. In the self one sees God as in a mirror, but as in a dream in the world of the fathers. And as in water one sees the surface of an object, so one sees him in the world of the Gandharvas. But he is seen as a light and shade in the heaven of the spirit. The calm soul, having comprehended the separateness of the senses, and the rising of them and their setting and their separate emergence, puts from him pain and sorrow. So the flux and the condition of association is contained in that yoking precedence which has previously been enumerated. The mind is higher than the senses, and higher than the mind is the genius, and above the genius is the mighty spirit, and higher than the mighty one is the unmanifested. So here it turns the association even in a slightly different way, but as it said, it's not to be logically defined upon. But highest above the unmanifested is the Purusha, who pervades all and alone has no sign or feature. Mortal man knowing him is released into immortality. So if the fulfillment of functions to the competency of the presence of cause, then the full suchness exceeds all accidental dimensions, yet is at the heart of all recognition, witness, fulfillment, and forming. God is not so at his body within the ken of seeing, neither does any man with the eye behold him, but to the heart and the mind and the supermind he is manifest. Who know him are the immortals. When the five senses cease and are at rest, and the mind rests with them, and the higher mind ceases from its workings, that is the highest state, say thinkers. So as I've previously tried to describe what occurs in these traditions of China or India or anywhere, of focalization to that which is ultimately resident and real and true, all inferior functions are not giving precedence over its reality. And so all of their functioning is at rest, and it allows that which is truly at peace and full in reality and one to express itself and be as the cause and presence of origin and occasion for the fulfillment of its life's self-realized, self-reliant function. The state unperturbed, when the senses are imprisoned in the mind, so not even leaving them their narrow sway. Of this they say, it is yoga. So here's the higher sense which many people have tried to communicate back to and rouse unto in its full meaning and significance of continent purpose and inclusive place of origin. The man becomes very vigilant, for yoga is the birth of things and their ending, this yoking of the opening and closing, of the fulfillment of the universe's happening, this all-inclusive integral yoga, this all-inclusive manifest and existential fulfillment to the premise of that real. This is the birth of things and their ending. And other than answering to the supreme and supernal and consonant and real, would not all other things be a narrow and superficial association and state? Not with the mind has man the power to get God, no, nor through speech, so not even through the perfection of the most honed articulation, nor by the eye, nor by external acquaintance or witness, unless one says, he is, unless one allows that continent presence, which is at the competent communion of all combining, that takes all angles into its real, that is the resident and delivering and supernal, the non-dual to all-inclusive and presence and origin. How would competency, presence, fulfillment, realization, integration be achieved, and how can one then become sensible of him if this is not, unless one says, he is, this is. One must apprehend God in the concept he is. This pivot must be its ruling reality and function, and also in his essential, so in this essence of this otherwise unconditioned truth and witness and margin. But when he has grasped him as the is, then the essential of God dawns upon a man. So that in which being can be, has full presence, has full cause, communion, full union of the dimension of its unalienated energy and soul and presence and fulfilled witness of unalienated reality, comes unto that which is and is the is, then the essential of God dawns upon a man. When every desire that finds lodging in the heart of man has been loosened from its moorings, then this mortal puts on immortality. So when all the dimensions of desire and association and birth are gathered up into this continent truth, this natural fulfillment of the foundation of cause, then one can rouse fully, competently, self-reliantly, self-inhabitedly to the supernal and essential and true. Ramakrishna used to like to say that one can realize the divine essence of what is necessary, of what they would call God in their age, but the word is unessential, only when one gives unto it the combined forces of the love of a mother for her child. So just like you have to care for it like your perfect child, as your perfect spouse, as your perfect friend, all of those different associations have to be brought to a point to not be lost unto their purpose. Then this mortal puts on immortality. Even here he tastes God in this human body. So if the supernal and present and true is, and is residently at the essence of all, then only being supremely undissipated can one awaken to the sense beyond sense. Can one in emblematic image be like Pythagoras hearing the harmony of the spheres unto the inner thrall of inhabitation of all things? The image is not important, but the perceiving and the possibility of intellectual resolution and reconciliation, of direct relation to the foundational cause of the premise of being, that is essential, and that is here in its connection of fulfilment and witness, fully expressed, experienced, and awoken. Yea, when all the strings of the heart are rent asunder, when we're not tied on anything, even here in this human birth, then the mortal becomes immortal. This is the whole teaching of the Scriptures. So here is said the whole essence of the reality of all these previous witnesses, and all it has to say lies in coming to this continent eternal of the ingenerable and everywhere present, which alone can rouse to full association and continent realization by not being dissipated by all its accidental associations, but by giving the meat to the meat, the full to the full, that which is great to the truly great, the full condition of reality to that which is its full inner inhabitation and cause, and being awoken thereof and therethrough. 101, and this is another image that it gives to illustrate the same point. 101 are the nerves of the heart. People used to say that people's heart had been attached to so many things, and they have so many threads of vibration in which you can feel the impositions put upon them. But it's by being unimposed upon that you can reveal your native reality and full truth. 101 are the nerves of the heart, and of all these only one issues out through the head of a man, and by this his soul mounts up to its immortal home, but the rest lead him to all sorts of and conditions of births in his passing. The Purusha, the spirit within, who is no larger than the finger of a man, is seated forever in the heart of creatures. One must separate him with patience from one's body. One must purify to the eternal and true essential residence, as one separates from the blade of grass its main fibre. Thou shalt know him for the bright immortal, yea, for the bright immortal. Thus did Nachiketas, with death for his teacher, win the God knowledge. He learned likewise the whole ordinance of yoga. Thereafter he obtained God, and became void of stain and void of death. So shall another be, who comes likewise to the science of the Spirit. And so, that culminating phrase and passage, so shall another be, who comes likewise to the science of the Spirit. So hopefully, in this essential continent communion and cause, which, as I've tried to show, can give the organic fulfillment and opening, both the reason why this expression was given, the condition in which this expression was recollected, the terms in which it was fulfilled, and the message that gives to fulfilled significance all these expressions and margins, and more than that, that we can pass beyond the word and come to the meaning, lose the letter and attain the spirit. That, I hope, we can do together and enjoy the richness that therein and therefrom can be awoken. Thank you. And please leave a comment if you wish. I would love to engage all of these things in detail and further. But let us come to the essence of what's animating the expression.